The size of it is far beyond the mind's reach. It can't be another ship. Sir, it's like something I've never seen before, and it's closing in at a preposterous speed. Wait, this can't be. It's disappeared.
What's up, everyone? Uh, Welcome to a late live stream. That it is actually late. It's about 9 o'clock Eastern time, and I started late. I was here, and then last minute decided I wanted to try a new setting on the FP, and now I'm late. But we're here talking. Wow, sorry about that. We're here talking today a little bit about the red announcement. I've seen it all over my YouTube feed, as YouTube does when these things happen. And I was like, I want to talk about it, but with my channel kind of primarily being about L mount, how can we talk about it and still be kind of in the niche? Dustin with the "You're on my fridge." I love this. I love this. Dustin is watching the live stream on his refrigerator, which is dope. Hello, Dustin, on your refrigerator. Derek, what's up, man? How are you? Are you going to NAB this year? I know you went last year. I'll be at NAB free roaming, so I'll get to hang out. And I'm excited. Speaking of which, while we're waiting for people to come in, if you're going to NAB, I will be free roaming. Last year, I've said this a couple of times, but last year I worked at a booth, the Nisi booth. And this year I was like, you know what? I want to go and just hang out. And so we're going to do that. So come say hey, come, if you're there, I'd love to meet up and chat. I may do like a little bit of a FP hangout, on the floor. I'm trying to not break the bank on this trip, but I definitely would like to meet everyone, and say hey. So come by, or I'll probably be on Instagram being like, oh, I'm at this booth for the next 20 minutes. Come say hey. Like I'm important or something. I don't know. So, but yes, so NAB will be fun, especially with the news from today. One thing that, and we'll go ahead and dive in because, YouTube, well, we've been here for 3 minutes. Hopefully YouTube is spreading the love. Also, side note, if you're curious, I am streaming, or when I'm using to stream is the Sigma FP with the Sigma 24 millimeter T1.5 Cine lens. No filtration. I'm trying something out to see if I can up the quality of my stream by not using any diffusion or detuning. So it's just straight camera. I'm in the classic Foveon classic yellow color mode. And so that's where we get a little bit of the color from. So anyways, if you're joining the stream, say hey. We'll pop up the chat. Dustin says I am very important. I appreciate it. It's funny, this actually comes a lot from conversations that Dustin and I and Caleb Hoover have been having, and even Matthew Dingu, where we're talking about cinema cameras. We're talking about, path of upgrade for L mount users, for people that are in the L mount alliance. You probably use a Lumix camera, maybe the Sigma FP, especially if you're, watching this stream. And a part of that conversation is what's kind of the upgrade path. What is the, if I want to go more professional camera, especially if I'm in cinema or video, what's the path of upgrading? And so we've been having that conversation of like, Lumix hasn't come out with a cinema camera in a few years. It doesn't, we don't know anything, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen for a long time. Just from, things, I don't know why I'm saying like that, but there's most likely not going to be a Lumix cinema camera for a while. And so what is the path right now? Is the path going black magic? And I want to kind of talk about that in relativity to the news from this Red/Nikon announcement, because I have feelings about it, right? Because like Red Code RAW is a little bit more of an industry accepted codec, and B-RAW, it just isn't. As far as people I've talked to that are being hired for higher productions, B-RAW is still one that's not as widely adopted as other codecs, whereas Red RAW a little bit is. And so that's kind of where the conversation comes of, does this announcement from Red hurt the L-mount alliance in the sense of, are there going to be people, and this is just kind of getting into it, but are there going to be people that will switch to a Nikon system knowing that they can take that glass that they have and they invest in with their Nikon cameras and transition it into a potential Red camera one day? And as much as Red has, this is a good question. I should probably start here. What's the announcement? The announcement from Red today was the fact that they now have, I think it's the Komodo X and the Raptor, one of the V Raptor. I can't remember which model specifically, and I'll pull it up here in a minute. But they now have a Nikon Z mount instead of Canon RF mount. This is not a surprise. It is now a Nikon-owned company, and so you're going to put Nikon technology in it. Now, I do think that from a couple of videos I watched, I do think that you do have the ability to take your RF mount, Komodo or Komodo X, or any compatible cameras for the Z mount upgrade and potentially swap the mount. I'll have to do a double check on that. Yeah, so Komodo X and V Raptor X have Nikon Z mount. So I don't know if there's other upgrades. I haven't gotten that far as like as internal upgrades, but yes, now they have Z mount. And there's a couple of reasons why I think it's a big enough move. I was talking about this. I'd be interested in looking through all this. Nikon Z mount for a mirrorless mount is a fairly versatile mount. You do have the ability, I believe, to adapt other mirrorless lenses to Nikon. I'll have to double check that. But similar to Sony E, which because of the short flange distance, you can adapt some mirrorless lenses, like Micro Four Thirds. You can adapt Micro Four Thirds lenses to Sony E mount. I believe Nikon Z mount also has a very short flange distance, and so you can adapt other mirrorless lenses to Nikon Z. I'm actually going to pull that up because I think you can actually even do RF lenses, RF to Z adapter. Some of the adapter brands have started putting out adapters for those cameras. And so, all that to be said, like it's a decently versatile mount. And there's that. But then also like the point of entry. So this is a big conversation that we have with amongst like our Lumix crew is again, going to back to that path of maturity, right? There's with Lumix and with the L Mount Alliance, there's not really a, I'm gonna think before I say this. Yeah, I mean, there's really not a sub $1,000 camera. The S9 gets close, and maybe the S9 is about the same cost as some of the Nikon, lower cost Nikon. But, that when you have a sub $1,000 camera or somewhere close to that, you have a lower point of entry for users. And so if somebody's just new to photography, they're going to look at what camera is potentially not, going to break the bank and potentially go that route. That may be a buying decision maker. And so you have a lower point of entry, but then you kind of stay with the system because you know that, okay, I have this way to go if I want to, get more professional. I mean, and let's be clear, like we've kind of poo-pooed on Nikon for some time, but Nikon as a brand and as a camera themselves, are making waves even without, I mean, yes, you do have, with the acquisition of Red, and there's the possibility of, potentially having Red Raw in a Nikon camera, which is a whole nother thing, because you could potentially look at, okay, you're getting a Komodo X. Okay, I don't want to necessarily buy two Komodo X's, or I want a solid B or C cam. Okay, let's look at a Nikon camera, because it is, potentially, if they do implement Red Raw with the Nikon cameras, you have just that vastness of availability as far as what professionals can use with the Nikon system. And this is where it goes back to, how does this affect? I love the question. It is not Scotch. It's actually I put an ice cube in my bourbon, a big like skull ice cube. It's bourbon, but at this point it's kind of watered down. So it's late. It burns. So I put an ice cube in it, not thinking about, I'm not going to drink it for a while. 1979 small batch, or 1870. I always forget the year. So where does it, how does that play into the L Mount Alliance? So they already did implement Red Raw. That's cool. How does that hurt, potentially affect the L Mount Alliance? Well, okay, so we're kind of all over the place as an alliance. Like if we're going to say we in the form of an L Mount Alliance, we're kind of all over the place. You have, Blackmagic's in the L Mount Alliance, but we can't really implement Blackmagic Raw into non-Blackmagic cameras. You can potentially, do it with the video assist, but every really camera can do that at this point. And so, there's not really, a little bit of codec share around the alliance, with the GH7 having ProRes RAW. It begs the question of, is the next flagship camera going to have ProRes RAW for Lumix? But then the S5 IIX doesn't have ProRes RAW internal. You can, shoot ProRes to an SSD, but you can't shoot ProRes RAW. And so it's just like a lot of like different, it feels very piecemeal, very Frankenstein, in the sense that there is no, unity conformity in the same way that now Nikon is doing with Red Raw. And that just, it really does make it enticing as someone, I'm not going anywhere. I'm using the Sigma FP, which is a now going on 6-year-old camera, and I love it to death. I just ordered a new one to replace my original one. And that's kind of my main go-to camera, but it's still, I won't lie, I've looked at Red cameras before. I was just looking at DSMC2 bodies this past week and looking at the Dragon 6K, even the Scarlet X, just trying to find like a budget friendly red, looking at some older Reds, and it's very enticing seeing the Komodo at $4,000 and or around that price range. And so to see this too, it's it kind of is it's hard to look past the fact that I could get something like a cool little camera, which is the Nikon ZF, and start shooting Nikon, get familiar with Nikon, and then if I want to move into a system, I've now potentially built up my Nikon Z lenses, and I can take those lenses into the Komodo X or the V Raptor X. And so like it's enticing. It seems more unified. It seems more, and yes, we're talking about like multiple brands and multiple companies with the L Mount Alliance versus, you know, really one company. But it would like this is one thing that I've always had issues with the L Mount Alliance is if you're gonna be in, be all in, like if you're gonna be in, be all in, help each other out. Lumix and Sigma has started to do that a little bit because this past year they've implemented where you can buy Sigma lenses on Lumix.com and vice versa. And they're starting to work together a little bit more and build up the alliance, but it's still got a long way to go as far as that uniformity. And so I do think that it makes it enticing for people that are kind of just getting into the system. It's something to think about. All right, I'm gonna take a break, reading some comments. And if you're just joining the stream, drop a comment. We'll read it off. We'll say hey. Come chat. I will be at a wedding during NAB this year, so I'm gonna have to miss seeing you. Oh man, I wish I could go though. Dustin says Black Magic. Yeah, Dustin, we know Black Magic. What's the announcement? We got that one right. I think I sold my FP and sold my Zcam, bought a Z8, sweet. And now the software update coming, Nikon RAW will essentially operate exactly like Red RAW. That's sick. That is sick. Z mount can adapt to M mount, E mount, wow, L mount, and it can adapt EF, PL, LPL, X mount. That's pretty dope. That is awesome. That's a long list. RF is still a no-go for now. That's fair. And then Nikon F. That's fair. And then we don't all go to NAB. I'm glad you guys do and report back. Yeah, that's my goal. I'll be taking probably the FP. I'm deciding on what lens I want to take and hang out and see what's there and talk to some people, talk to some brands, and do my thing. So Nikon owning patent now, do you think they'll lighten up or license the internal RAW now? I don't know. I mean, you think that like a business is still a business. Like Red had a chokehold on that patent for so long. But Nikon is still a business. Like it's I've heard people say, okay, well, now that Nikon owns it, they're gonna, let it go. I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're going to probably do what Sony does with a lot of their sensor technology and kind of like hoards a lot of the, big features for their cameras. I don't think that's officially a thing, but come on. But I think Nikon's going to hold on to Red RAW for a while before they, do anything with that patent. But then at the same time, I'm curious of like what that does with the patent timeline. Because patents are only, effective for, I think, 7-10 years, something like that. So we'll see. Kind of how Sony has A6500 ZVE1 Burano with E-mount. Fair. Oh yeah, that full ecosystem. It really is. It really is. And I think that's one thing that it makes it, and again, it makes it enticing because you start at what's the cheapest Nikon? Let me be specific and say Nikon Z mount. I mean, you can get a Z5 for $700. Damn, you can get a Z50 for $400. That's used. Let's see. So that's a ZF. I really do like the ZF. The ZF looks nice. Okay. What is this? The Z30? This is how much I know about Nikon cameras. So in theory, okay, so in theory, like the Z30, is it a full frame? I don't even know. But just for conversation, the Z30 is $600. So like you could have a $600 camera, get into the system on a $600 camera, and go all the way up to a freaking V Raptor X, which is $30,000. I mean, literally, you have 10 times the or I know it's not 10 times, but $30,000. So you have $600 potentially, as an entry level into the Nikon system. And I think that's the RF version as well. It's named the Z mount version. But right now the V Raptor X is $30,000. So that's a large ecosystem. Like that's where that does kind of start rivaling Sony at that point. Now Sony has the Burano. I can't remember if the what is their big cinema camera? Oh, I'm blanking. Yeah, you might already know what I'm talking about. My brain is done for the day. I think that's LPL or PL. I don't remember. It might be E-mount. I'm not sure, but I think it's LPL or PL. For me, just a personal thing. I don't like Red Raw. Ooh, shots fired. Shots fired. I played with Red Raw a little bit. I'll be honest, I wasn't that impressed. And if Joe watches this, Joe from Driven Films watches this, it's not your footage. I think I told him one point that I was not impressed with Red Raw. And he was like, "Oh, I think he got offended by it because he thought I was playing with his footage." No, it was downloaded from Red's website. So yeah, I've not always been super, and especially as outdated sometimes cinema DNG can be. There's really not a lot that I can't do on cinema DNG that I can do in Red Raw. I will say that really doesn't have to do with the codec. But that doesn't have to do with codec. I won't even mention it. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. I hope that Blackmagic and Lumix and Sigma would be smart enough to offer B-Raw internal in Lumix and Sigma cameras. Wishful thinking? Yes. I'm going to say yes. I think Blackmagic is a company that holds stuff close to their chest for the most part. I think there's going to be some things that eventually we may see get implemented as a perk for other brands in the L-Mount Alliance from Blackmagic. You got to think that like there's got to be some sort of like, hey, if you're going to license our mount, give us some stuff in return. I don't know obviously what the agreement is, but I don't see internal B-roll happening. The fact that the GH7 now, the Micro Four Thirds obviously is not in the L-Mount Alliance, but the fact that the GH7 has ProRes RAW instead of B-RAW, that kind of signaled to me that it's going to be a while, if ever, that B-RAW is going to come into a non-Blackmagic camera, especially because ProRes RAW. Because I'm pretty sure, well, that's an Apple thing. It's not an Atomos thing. That's an Apple codec. I like B-RAW more, but totally get it's not widely accepted. Hopefully that changes though. And I think that's the conversation, because if I'm honest, I'd rather have B-RAW than Red RAW in a lot of scenarios. But then you start talking about, yes, is it industry standard? Is B-RAW really raw? Because I think it's already debayered. And so it's not true compressed RAW. That's kind of how they got around it. And so while, yes, I do like B-RAW, I love the flexibility of B-RAW. I love the ease of editing of B-RAW. It's just not accepted as much. Rebalance the universe. Absolutely. Z50, I think at 900. Oh yeah, it's 600. I think it was on a deal for 600, to be fair. Elmont Alliance needs a cinema camera, Vericam 2025. I would love a L mount cinema camera. I have begged Sigma on multiple occasions to make a cinema camera, like a true cinema camera. As much as I can say, like the FP is marketed to be a small mirrorless cinema camera, it's lacking IO. It's lacking that studio ready A camera aspect. And so I don't think I would call it a true cinema camera in that sense. Um, but I've said this is a market, and the fact that you guys have a whole cinema department, and it's doing decently well, I think there's a reason to maybe do a cinema camera. So I would love a Sigma Cine, like a full fledged kind of like take on Fuji with their cinema camera. I'm a bad influence. Cheers. You've convinced me. Pour a wild turkey. I love it. I love it. I love a good whiskey. It makes my life so happy. Yes. To be fair, Reds do look great, but the codec and using Red software, the workflow is a nightmare. Hopefully Nikon changes that too. I've never had like that many issues with Red Raw. But sure, I think everybody has their own experience in it. I'm also a glutton for punishment and edit cinema DNG half the time. So I take that with a grain of salt. B-roll is much easier, better workflow in my opinion, but you have to use Resolve. I think you can use can you use Premiere now with B-roll? I don't know. But yes, you do have to pretty much use Resolve, which is fine for the most part. And then if BM let Lumix add internal B-raw, expect Lumix camera to increase by quite a bit for the licensing. Yeah, I mean, sure. I think that's a very big possibility. I would love, here's like I need to make a video about this, like my perfect cinema camera. And that is somewhere between the color science of Sigma colors, because they're fantastic at colors, with that kind of special tweaking sauce that Blackmagic puts on their sensors. And then the build quality of Sigma and Lumix, get the IO in there, give us a full-fledged cinema camera. Don't give us a Pixis. Like I love the Pixis, but it's not a cube camera. It's a rectangular cube camera. I have feelings. I'm sorry, Dustin. I know I'm hurting your feelings right now, but I might get a Pixis. Who knows? But there's little things that annoy me about it. Sorry, I was saying perfect scenario. So Sigma colors tweaked a little bit with Blackmagic Raw, and then Lumix autofocus. I think that'd be like the perfect setup, honestly, like as far as a sensor goes. And then we can go on about build and all the different options. What would a Lumix cinema camera look like? I thought they were already pretty much cinema cameras, especially the GH7. I think it looks similar, in my opinion, to the box cameras they put out, like the BS1H or the BGH1. I think that is what a cinema camera looks like for Lumix. As much as like the GH series, does have a lot of that cinema aspect. When you talk about a cinema camera is not, and I feel like the conversation around what is a cinema camera varies from person to person and group to group. But some people believe that if your camera records RAW, then it's a cinema camera. Some people say it's dynamic range. Some people say it's, various things. I've kind of come on to the idea that if you label your camera as a cinema camera, it has to have cinema IO options. That is one reason why people will buy cinema cameras, is for production ready IO. And it's one of those, I wouldn't say it's a small thing, um, because IO is very important, but it's something we don't always talk about with when we talk about cameras. And maybe it's because we're on the YouTube, kind of prosumer side of things. But IO is very important for cinema cameras. If you're on set, you look at something like the Komodo. I think the Komodo is. I was watching a video where a guy said it's kind of on the fence because it doesn't have production ready IO. There was a whole reason why the KX was invented, is to give people that wanted the Komodo and could basically use the Komodo as an A camera, give them the option to upgrade to the KX. Excuse me. The bourbon gives me the burps, and I had Taco Bell for dinner, so much apologies. But the reason why the KX was in or put out was because people adopted the Komodo as an A camera because it was a $6,000 red camera. And until that point, there really hasn't been a or at that point hasn't been a red camera that was that obtainable. And so people were buying it, and similar to kind of like how people would treat the FP, because that's kind of how I treated the FP was, this is not really a production ready camera, but I used it for my A cam and just built it out to be a little bit more production ready when I was on those types of shoots. But that is the bigger thing, is the fact that a cinema camera that is going to be utilized as an A camera in a cinema aspect needs to have cinema quality IO. And that's where that conversation of like mirrorless versus cinema camera kind of comes in. And that's why, like, I would say like Blackmagic pocket cameras are a cinema camera because they do have, for the most part, pretty professional IO. They don't have like SDI, and they don't have full XLR, but they have a alternative to it. And so, yes, that's why I say like the box cameras are probably the best thing to kind of showcase what Lumix cinema camera look like, because they do have professional IO. Dustin says, "Oh, I should probably mute my audio." How did that come through? Did my AirPods die? Interesting. Dustin says, "I bet if Lumix added B-roll, it'd be $200 license. Feel like Arilog C3." Yeah, I think it would probably be the same that we got with like the S5 2X. It would probably be like a small little add-on, if you wanted to do it. Likely better, more standardized IO for sure. Okay, here's my hypothetical Lumix cinema camera would look like. Box style camera, dynamic range boost. Oh, I don't like dynamic range boost. B-raw, ProRes RAW, internal, 6K open gate slow-mo, standardized IO, XLR2 built in. That would be dope. All I got so far. I keep building on that. I believe in you. I believe in you. I always thought it came down to codecs, fan, and internal NDs. I think those are internal NDs. I don't think again, this changes person to person, group to group. I don't think it plays as big a part as standardized IO. That is, you look at Josh Martin, who runs Cine Dailies. He bought a Kinfinity, and really, it's generally similar to same sensor as a Fuji X-H2S, from what I've heard. So like if you wanted the image, if you wanted like, and it doesn't offer internal NDs or really anything beyond taking, if it's almost like if you were to take the sensor of the X-H2S, and put it into a cinema housing, which, going back to, that comes down to IO. So that's kind of my take on that. As far as I know, I kind of am in that camp of it being a standardized IO, because you got to think about like the reason why it's standardized IO kind of makes the difference is when you're on set, You're working with a team of people, and a lot of that standardized IO is there to make working with a team of people more efficient. And so that's where that conversation comes in of like, that's the difference maker, because you can take it on set and, have a reliable SDI connection for any type of like follow focus unit. If there's XLR, you have the ability to use full-fledged XLR. Like, it just kind of goes into like the efficiency of it. If you look at cinema cameras, especially bigger cinema cameras, they have components everywhere, and all of that's kind of going into the brain of the camera. And what's allowing for that is the IO. Oh, internal NDs. Oh, for the Lumix. Yeah, internal NDs would be dope for the Lumix. Body style like Panasonic AVC cam. Interesting. It's great body. Panasonic already has great body styles they could upgrade. I shoot my show on an AF 100p. Love cinema bodies. Absolutely. I thought to qualify as a cinema camera was Codecs having fan internal. Did I already read that one? No, sorry. That was a double there. You decided a V-Raptor XLX. Sorry, you described a V-Raptor XLX. Just slap a Lumix sticker on it. Fair. Jeff, what's up, man? Hey, Jeff, are you getting one of the new Reds? Let us know. We might have the answer. Oh, there we go. Yeah, this whole Z mount thing had me looking at old Red cams. Boy, the prices have come down. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I again, this past week, I was looking at, I constantly go back to DSMC2 bodies, because DSMC3 still a little bit out of my price range, but DSMC2, wow, they're enticing. And I know, like, yes, you have to deal with the media that's proprietary, and that can get expensive. And honestly, after all that media, it's probably around the same price as a Komodo. But yeah, I mean, they're becoming more and more affordable, and hopefully with a company like Nikon backing them up, they'll keep going down. It's because they get you with the accessories. I think you could. I was looking at this. I was doing the math on this a couple years ago, because I was looking at a Komodo a couple years ago. I think you could slowly build it out and make it work. I think you can make a Komodo work. Would you go to set with it? Maybe not. But like, if you're somebody like me that, is a solo filmmaker or videographer, and you want the Red image and are willing to kind of like Frankenstein it a little bit, I think you could do it with limited accessories. I may be wrong, and someone can correct me, but I think it's doable. Is it ideal? No, but I think it's doable. I think DSMC2 was a lot more of the accessories. I think DSMC3 has gotten to that point where you have especially less proprietary accessories. Like, you could potentially slap on a solid, because I believe the Komodo still only use SDI. But you could slap on a solid SDI monitor. It doesn't have to be a Red monitor. You could slap on an SDI monitor, have a side handle and your power source and CFast card. I believe it takes CFast cards. But then at that point, you're ready to go. And if you already have the monitor because you've used it on other cameras, if you already have the side handle grip because you've used it on other cameras, if you already have the CFast because you've already used it on other cameras, like, you could literally roll with that. And Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but you could literally roll with that on a Komodo. Again, is it ideal? Maybe not, but it will get you to start filming, to have just the kind of Komodo body with some of those things you may already have, and maybe the batteries that the Komodo use, because I don't know what other cameras use those batteries. Roving Earth, Armstrong makes sense. Komodos are cheap now. Komodos are, I think, less than Sony FX3s, which is crazy, and it's still out of my price range. At least my I can sleep well at night price range, but still, it's crazy. They've been trained 3.3K, 3.6K body only. Jeez, trending. That makes more sense. Watch out with the media on DSMC2. Yeah, I think Kippertai still sells some new mags. Don't tell me that. Oh yeah, for sure can. I use my phone with Komodo a lot, and that's the other thing too. Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard that the Red app for phones is way better than the Lumix app on phones. Sorry, anybody at Lumix that's listening. I'm gonna probably stop getting Lumix gear. But it is better. I think it's more reliable than what we're used to with the Lumix app, and people will use it a lot with their Komodos. Depending on where you are filming, interface isn't always bad. Fair enough. Okay, last comment about cinema camera. The S1H was the first mirrorless camera with time code. I can see the S1H2 having standardized I/O. Hopefully S1H2 has the C70, C80 style body. I mean, there's definitely rumors floating around there that it may be more of a cinema body. I do think that it would. I think it would be a travesty for Lumix to not make the S1H Mark II or whatever they call it, make it a just badass cinema style camera. Like I genuinely think that is their next cinema camera, is whatever the S1H is going to be. With the broadcast department and the consumer department, or I can't remember what the consumer department's actually called. But with that kind of things kind of merging a little bit and things moving around and everything, I do think that you're going to see a Lumix cinema camera rather than maybe a Panasonic cinema camera. And that's going to be the next potential cinema camera from Lumix. Obviously, I just said it was Lumix, whatever. But yes, I do see that. All the things you say, though, is it ideal? Not always, for sure. Depends on what you were doing, for sure. I think, the reason why I did that math and kind of went that route, because like at the time I was just doing the YouTube channel. Like now I'm doing a little bit of freelance, and so I may need something a little bit more reliable or something a little bit more standardized, so to speak. But at the time that I was looking at the Komodo, I was like, I could get by with minimal stuff and lower the cost. And even now I'm like, okay, I could still do it and just kind of slowly build the stuff up. And when it's ready, then take it on set. But it is very enticing, very enticing. If it wasn't for the fact that like I love my little FP as much as I do and vouch for this camera and have gotten the image kind of, right where I want it, Komodos would be very, very much enticing. Buy a Pixis. I love the BMCC 6K. I admit I slept on it. Yeah. And I actually was looking at it this past week because we were talking about the Pixis. And I was like, man, that's the same sensor. And everybody's going crazy about the Pixis, but it's the same sensor. It's the same sensor. I don't think there's any new technology. I think someone said there's maybe a little bit more anamorphic support. I don't remember what. There was a couple like small upgrades, but for all the intents purposes, they took that sensor, they took that technology and put into a box camera. It took that sale for me to give it a shot. Which sale was that? Did they put it on sale? Because let me know. Lumix autofocus, Lumix stabilization, Vlog, and cinema style body for 5K. I'll be a very happy man. Thanks, Anson, for reading the comments. Absolutely, man. Thank you for commenting. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think Lumix has all the tools to make this work. They have all the tools in their cameras now to make this work. It's just a matter of in myself, Caleb Hoover, Dustin Armstrong, like I say your name like you're not on the stream right now. But we've all been like, give us everything that you're doing here, just not in a mirrorless body. And if that happened, and maybe if they put an OLPF back, take that from the S1H, put the OLPF in, and gave us something in a cinema body, like that would be the ideal setup. And I think some of us are hoping that that's what comes with whatever happens next with the S1H line. Because I think that would be game over, especially if it's aggressively priced. Especially for people that would answer this question of like, does stuff like this hurt the L Mount Alliance? Because then you have, and I still do think that there is a gap at the lower end. I think Lumix needs to make an L Mount Super 35 camera. I think that's what needs to happen to make it sub $1,000, or even take something like the S5, maybe beef it up a little bit and sell that sub 1,000. I mean, you can get an S5 for under $1,000, but at this point it's older. So put phase detect in it, maybe strip it of something, maybe like do some of the things you did with the S9, strip it down a little bit and sell it for sub $1,000. And that way you make that lower range of cost available, that point of entry available. And then have something like, if the S1H, the next S1H is a cinema camera that has all these things, like that would now make the L Mount Alliance that ecosystem that is like the holy shit ecosystem with all that's offered there. And so that would be badass. And so like I'm for that. I'm getting excited because as much as I love Blackmagic, like let's be honest. I've had a love-hate relationship with Blackmagic. I've been burned by Blackmagic. I kind of got bitter there for a while, and so I stopped using Blackmagic, stopped even like thinking about Blackmagic. But recently they've started doing some really cool things, and so I'm not so much of a hater anymore. But as much as I like Blackmagic, the thing that I think cripples Blackmagic is B-roll. Like, you cannot have a camera that is going to be what you want in the industry and it only have B-roll. Like, you gotta, like, I think someone said they put ProRes in the full frame 6K. They just need to stop selling the cameras right at launch without ProRes. They need to do what they did years ago, give people the option of a high quality ProRes and Blackmagic RAW. And I don't know what happened along the way. I don't know if it was an Atomos thing. I don't know. But the fact that we were talking about this past week, because Dustin was trying to look at the Ursa Cine, and I'm like, how are you going to have a $6,000 body, $12,000 kit that only has B-raw? That's, if you're spending that much on a kit, you're doing something, right? And you're probably going to want to do something that's consistent with the industry trends. And so I think that's, to me, what holds it back. And don't get me wrong, like I said many times, I like B-roll, but having it be the only option, let's be more specific, having it be the only option, I think is the crippling thing there. It was on sale for $15.95 back in May of last year for a month or so. I should have picked it up then. Damn it. That was probably when I was still on my Blackmagic hater days. I think he's talking about the time around NAB when it was, yeah, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. After the S1H, the GH7 is Lumix's most powerful camera, and spec-wise, it's basically a Netflix-approved camera. I still don't know why the GH7 is not Netflix-approved. It doesn't have a time code. I think it has a time code. I don't know. I still don't know why. I feel Lumix needs to release a few new lenses, particularly parfocal zoom lenses. Honestly, I think Lumix need to make less lenses. I think they need to let Sigma make the lenses, and they need to focus on cameras. that's one thing that like has been frustrating for, I know, the FP community is like, we don't have a new camera. We don't have, it's been a long time. We don't have a new camera. Eh, They're not a camera brand. They're a lens brand, and they are very open about the fact that they're a lens brand. And so I think use this alliance to their advantage. Let Sigma make all the glass. They make some kick-ass cameras, and that's the relationship there. And so I wish they would do less lenses. If they want a pancake lens, partner with Sigma, do a Sigma collaboration. For that matter, I mean, they do like a collaborations, but like, don't make stop making lenses. And I know there's a lot of people that love their lenses, and I love some of their lenses, but like, their lenses have never been one that I've gravitated to if I have a Sigma at the ready. I really do think I wish they would focus their R&D on cameras, putting out some badass cameras. They already put out some badass cameras, but even more badass cameras, and let Sigma put out the badass lenses. Like, I think that's what they do. That would be my thing. So now if Sigma wants to put out a parfocal zoom lens, that would be fantastic. Maybe even a parfocal zoom cinema lens. And I would say, yeah, I agree with the rest of that statement. I actually think that, yeah, the GH7, I was going to say that. I think the GH7 is more powerful. I do wonder why they got rid of ProRes. I don't know why they got rid of ProRes. Like, they've had ProRes since like the Pocket Cinema camera. And I only imagine it has something to do with their need to push B-roll. I don't know. But it is a little maddening that they get rid of it. I don't mind. I don't mind B-roll either. Let's be clear. I do like a Baron ProRes RAW. The only thing I like about ProRes RAW is I can convert it to Cinema DNG with the convert. That's not a reason to like ProRes RAW, but I do like B-roll. Yeah, it is because we edit in DaVinci. I never really paid much attention to Blackmagic until the Pixis. I used to use Blackmagic almost exclusively. Like, at the time when I was using Blackmagic, my FP was like my D camera at that point. Like, it was like an every once in a while I'll pick it up kind of thing, because I had the Pocket 4K, 6K, 6K Pro. And then when my 6K Pro got fried, I was just like, never again. I think I've told this story too many times. I won't tell it again, but I think the Pixis and even the full frame, when it came out, kind of got me back on, okay, they're starting to listen. They're starting to listen to their customer base. I'm intrigued. So, even Red has ProRes in it. So does Ari. I think Sony does a 2 with the Venice. Yeah, it does not make sense. I don't understand the full frame aspect. Yeah, it has time code. I know. Why is it not Netflix approved? I don't know why. Like, did Netflix just stop approving cameras? Like, I've refreshed the Netflix list, and I'm like, why is the GH7 not on here? I'm super curious. And I wonder if the company has to submit it for approval. That may be the thing too, because maybe companies just not submitting it for approval now, like they haven't in a while. I don't know. I think it's not Netflix approved because it doesn't have OLPF. Interesting. Ursa Mini 12K wasn't approved until they added. Interesting. That would make sense in some ways, I guess. Interesting. I forgot that the 12K put OLPF in there, to be honest. I forgot they had an OLPF version. Do you mean ProRes RAW? ProRes converts Cinema DNG or converts to, what do you mean there? So because I use DaVinci Resolve, whenever I shoot ProRes RAW with the FP or the S5 2X, I have a RAW converter software that takes the ProRes RAW and basically converts it into a compressed Cinema DNG file. And that's how I'm able to use it in DaVinci Resolve. So that's the only reason. It's funny because I take that Cinema DNG and put it into Blackmagic color space. So like I should just use the Blackmagic Video Assist, but it's so much more expensive. It's so much more expensive. It doesn't have as much tools as the Atomos monitors. And there's a couple of other reasons, but yeah. So, all right, y'all. I told my wife I would stream until 10 because we're going to watch some TV. You guys have been so awesome with the chats today. Yeah, I think honestly, I'm excited about what the L Mount Alliance has to offer. I'm obviously not going anywhere. I'm at the point where I'm like not even nerding out about technology at this point. I'm shooting with a 6-year-old camera, have another one potentially on the way. I love my little FP. I love my Lumix cameras. Definitely not going anywhere, but it is food for thought. It is food for thought to contact your local L Mount Alliance representative and say, hey, get your shit together. Derek, thanks for joining the stream. Thank you for joining the stream. Thank everyone for joining the stream. Yes, Video Assist. I did dream about an FP with that. Oof. I've actually stopped using any kind of compressed RAW with the FP. If I'm going to do anything, I'm going to just use the internal 8-bit. I love it because I've started to get that 8-bit dialed in, and I'm loving it. This is the 8-bit color space, and I honestly I don't think I've shot RAW since like December. I think everything that I've shot on the FP has been the 8-bit color space with the teal and orange profile. Roving, have a good night. That being said, thank you guys all for joining. 8-bit, nice, very nice. Teal and orange, go to, put your sharpness down, put your contrast down, put the Lumix Dark Knight LUT. All right, this is the last thing I'm going to say, I promise. At minimum, we can get FP, CFX. Yeah, that would be great. I'll put that one up. I said I was done, but I'll put that one up. If you are a Sigma FP owner, maybe you own some Lumix cameras too, go down the Lumix Lab app, do yourself a favor, go down the Lumix Lab app, look for the Dark Knight LUT in the, I think it's in the creator tab of the Lumix Lab. Dustin also has a very nice LUT on there too. So does Matthew, so does Caleb. I do not. I procrastinate and I have not submitted one yet. But go look at the Dark Knight S, I think it is. It is, if you go watch any of my videos since January, like the beginning of January, I've used teal and orange 8-bit. Again, sharpness turned all the way down, contrast turned all the way down with the Dark Knight LUT, and I think it's chef's kiss. So do yourself a favor, download the Lumix Lab app, look for that LUT, shoot 8-bit, have fun. I mean, honestly, you can shoot any camera and apply that LUT, and I think it looks really good. So all right, you guys, thank you all again for joining for the 5th time. Go and find your journey, go embrace life. Don't go buy a red. Maybe go buy a red. Do what makes you happy. Peace.